Hey guys, and welcome back. If you're new here, my name is Ashley, and today we are going to finally be emptying out my freezers. I have these apples that I have sliced up and peeled, and today is applesauce day. It has been a long time coming, so I'm going to start by getting one of these batches going. This is 2 bags, probably about like 7.5 pounds of apples, and I'm putting 1.5 cups of water. I'm going by the ball recipe for applesauce. I can link it in the description. We are also going to be working on a delicious Tres Leches cake that my family absolutely loves, and I will also link that in the description as well. So what we're doing here is we are going to cook down these apples and let them come to a boil. And in the meantime, I'm going to wash up all my jars and get them all nice and clean. These were already clean and in my cabinet, but I like to give them a fresh wash every time I go to use them. And I also am going to wash the rings and the lids. Now that my jars are all clean, I have to set my processing time on my canner, which is 25 minutes. This recipe calls for 20 minutes processing time. I have to add an extra 5 minutes for my elevation. While my jars are now warming up, I'm going to give my apples a good stir so they don't burn on the bottom. So I'm going to continue mixing them until they are fully cooked, which they are just about fully cooked. I'm looking for them to be like a mashable consistency. I have my immersion blender here. I'm going to go in at an angle and just puree these with the immersion blender. You want to be careful with this step because our apples are now piping hot and they will splatter on you if you hold this the wrong way or lift it up too high. I did end up turning off the heat and removing this from the heat because it was boiling too high and splattering all over me, as you see here. Now I put it back on the heat to make sure it stays at that boiling temperature. As you can see here, it's nice and smooth, which is just how my family likes it. You can leave yours a little chunkier if that's how you like it. Now we have to add just one ingredient before we can it up. You want to use some bottled lemon juice, make sure it's bottled. And we are going to add 3 tablespoons of bottled lemon juice. There's 1. Two. And 3. Now we're going to mix this all up and get our jars ready to start canning. I'm trying to make sure I fully incorporate that lemon juice into the whole batch. I just pulled this jar out of the canner, so this is nice and hot. It was heating up with the canner. So you want to make sure you're taking a hot jar to put your hot liquids in, otherwise you have a chance of breaking your jar. We are filling these up to a 1/2 inch headspace. Now you're going to take your debubbler tool and go around the edge to release any bubbles that may be trapped inside. I also forgot to mention that you can add sugar to this recipe if that's how you like your applesauce. I do not prefer sugar in my applesauce, so I left that out. It is optional. Now I'm checking to see if I have the right headspace, and I had a little too much in there, so I'm going to gently scoop that out and then remeasure my headspace. We now have the correct headspace, so I'm going to come in with some white vinegar on a paper towel to take any applesauce that may be on the rim here off, and there definitely is some on there because this is a messy process. I always make sure to do this step because if you don't, then you can risk your jars not sealing because of that applesauce stuck on there or whatever you are canning. You're also going to want to check for any nicks in the rim as you're doing that, because if there's a nick in the rim or chip out of the rim, it will not seal. Now I'm going to put my lid and ring on fingertip tight, and we're going to get this into the canner. Now I'm going to show you this process one more time. I'm going to fill my jar, and I'm going to continue doing this until all my jars are full and I have a full canner load, and then I will process my second batch. I'm going to debubble. Check the headspace is at a 1/2 inch. And this time we are just short, so I'm going to add just a little bit more applesauce in there, smooth it out on top, recheck my headspace, and then wipe off the rim again. Lid on, ring on, fingertip tight. And into the canner it goes. Now, after my canner was completely full with this round, I had just enough left for a little baby jar full, which was perfect. My baby will enjoy that later, so I'm going to lock my lid on my canner and get this processing for its 25 minutes, and then it will need to cool for 5 minutes after. And in the meantime, I'm going to get my next batch going off camera. This is what I got left over after getting 7 pints from the second batch. In total, we got 13 pints. These are the first 6 that came out. There's 7 in the canner. 13 pints plus those 2 extra jars. And now I'm going to make our Tres Leches cake. This is delicious. Today is the day before Valentine's Day, so I'm making this for my Valentines on Valentine's Day. My kids love this cake. My husband loves this cake, so I figured why not? I make the cake portion the night before. So I have to separate all my eggs here. I have 5 eggs. We want to separate the egg yolks and the egg whites into different bowls, and we will need both of them for different parts of this recipe. I make the cake the night before, and the milk mixture, and I let that milk mixture sit in the cake overnight, and then I'll frost it the following day for Valentine's Day. I feel like I've been making this cake a lot lately. This is the new requested birthday cake. My daughter also requested this cake for her birthday, and her birthday is in a few weeks, so I will be making it again off camera very shortly. I added 3/4 of a cup of sugar into my mixing bowl here, and I'm adding just the egg yolks in, and we are going to beat this until it is a pale yellow. Now I'm going to go in with 1/3 cup of milk and a teaspoon of vanilla extract. And get that all mixed up, and then we are going to pour that over top of our flour mixture. So for our flour mixture, we need 1 cup of all-purpose flour, 1½ teaspoons of baking powder, and 1/4 teaspoon of salt. And give that a good mix. Now it is ready for our egg mixture. I'm going to pour this over the top, and you're going to just barely want to mix this until it's incorporated. You don't want to overmix it. Now for the other portion of our cake mixture, I have my egg whites going into the mixer here, and we are going to make a meringue. We are going to whip these egg whites until they become stiff peaks, and as these are whipping, I have 1/4 cup of granulated sugar here that I'm just going to be slowly adding in a little at a time until we achieve those stiff peaks. Now we're going to combine our meringue mixture into our yolk mixture. Now we are going to be folding in about 1/3 of this mixture at a time, being ever so gently with it, and just trying to keep as much air as we possibly can in this. We don't want to flatten it out. We don't want a flat cake. This makes a very fluffy cake for all the milk to seep into. It is just absolutely delicious. Now that we have our beautiful cake mixture here, I'm going to take my ungreased 9x13 cake pan here, and I'm going to evenly spread this throughout. At this point, you're going to want to make sure your oven is already preheated to 350 degrees Fahrenheit. Now our cake is ready to go in our preheated oven at 350 degrees for 25 to 35 minutes. I ended up baking mine for 30 minutes, which ended up being perfect. Now all of our applesauce is done. I just love the sight of seeing all the cans processed, and our cake is done. Now to ensure it's fully done, I'm going to take a butter knife through the middle, and if it comes out dry, then the cake is fully done. I also like to give it a little jiggle. If it jiggles, then it's not done. This cake is a nice golden brown. Now that our cake is done, we are going to make our milk mixture that's going to seep in the cake. When the cake is fully cooled, we will add this. So we're going to do 1 can of evaporated milk, which is 12 ounces, and then a 14-ounce can of sweetened condensed milk. And last, we will need a 1/4 cup of whole milk. We are going to give this a good whisk to mix all of our milks together. Cake is now cooled, so now we have to poke some holes into the cake. I'm going to do this with a butter knife. Now I'm going to come in with my milk mixture and pour this over the top and try to get it evenly spread as good as I can, and try not to make too much of a mess in the process. What I could have probably done here to save some of the mess would have been to use a spatula or spoon to help spread out the milk. I'm going to cover this in saran wrap and put this in the fridge overnight. You can let it sit for at minimum 4 hours, but I choose to just do it overnight, plus it makes it simpler the next day. Because now tomorrow all I have to do is frost it. It is Valentine's Day now, and I just want to show you what I'm making for breakfast. Just some heart-shaped pancakes for my kiddos and my husband, and my kids love these little heart-shaped pancakes. Don't mind all the burnt bits. I've already made a bunch of these, and they've just been hanging out in the pan. I went back and forth on whether I was going to make these strawberry flavored with my strawberry powder. I already did this last week and I just wanted to use this strawberry syrup on top of them, so I didn't want it to be too overpowering. These ended up super delicious, and it is now time to check to see if our jars have sealed, and I am happy to say that we have 100% of them sealed. And lately I've had some jar lid failures, and I have not been too thrilled with that, and I was extremely nervous about these because every ounce of this is precious to my children. They love Mommy's applesauce, and I didn't make as much this year as I usually do. So I'm very thrilled that all of these have sealed. I did just use the ball lids this time around, and I was nervous that that was why I was getting some lid failures, but these ones all sealed, so very happy with that. Last but not least, we have to do our whipped cream topping. So I have 1 pint of heavy whipping cream that I'm going to add to my stand mixer. Half a teaspoon of vanilla extract. 3 tablespoons of powdered sugar. Now all we have to do is whip this up, and we have our whipped cream frosting. Whipped cream was probably one of the first things I learned how to make when I was a teenager from scratch, and it's one of my favorite things. Nothing compares to homemade whipped cream. Super simple and delicious. Keep an eye on this because it does whip pretty fast. And there we have it, a beautiful whipped cream that is ready to frost our cake. Cake is now out of the fridge. Ignore the ground beef, that is for dinner, not for our cake. I'm sure if you're a little more gentle than I am, that the cake wouldn't peel off when I pulled up the saran wrap. But it's going to get covered up anyway, so it doesn't really matter. I'm just going to plop all this whipped cream onto the cake and just evenly spread it out. The recipe says you can top this with some ground cinnamon for a garnish. I'm going to skip that. I'm sure that'd be lovely, but I'm going for a different flavor profile here. Now, since it is Valentine's Day, I want to add a little special touch, so I'm going to come in with my strawberry powder and just try to lightly sprinkle some on top. This ends up coming out a little bit heavier than I wanted, but that's okay. That's why I only did a small portion of this instead of the whole cake that I was originally planning. Be careful because this stuff is strong, although it is delicious. And there we have it, a beautiful Valentine's heart to add a special touch for my loved ones. Thank you for watching, have a blessed day, and I hope to see you next time.